you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our.
Hey, Rabbi, next Sunday, I'm having breakfast at my house.
God willing.
Whoever's sitting here wants to come, let me know so I know how many people.
First of all, I want to welcome everyone to our weekly Sunday morning class, and I would like to also wish happy birthday to Arthur Worth, who today is his birthday, and we want to wish you that you should have many, many more. And in fact, I will dedicate today's class to you. So this will be in your honor. So you should have many, many more birthdays and good health. That's right. Good health. Good health and good prosperity. So let's get right into it. Okay. So today, as you know, naturally we'll talk about the day that we find ourselves in, which is the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Tamuz. Actually, today is the 18th day. The 17th was on Shabbos, yesterday. On the 17th of Tamuz is usually a day when we fast from morning to night. And the reason we fast is for 5 reasons. The sages tell us 5 calamities befell the Jewish people on the 17th of Tammuz. Before I get into the 5 things, today, as I mentioned, we, of course, when it falls on a Shabbos, we don't fast, because you're not allowed to fast on Shabbos, except if Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos, then we fast on Shabbos. But any other time, we delay the fast to the next day. So, for example, in 3 weeks from now, there'll be another fast, which also falls on Shabbos, the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, and because it falls on Shabbos, we fast, so we push it to the next day. So today really is the fast of the 17th of Tammuz, even though it's a day later, it's the 18th. What happened on the 17th of Tammuz? 5 things we're told to happen on this day. Number 1, and that's what we read in the Torah portion today. The first thing that happened on the 17th of Tammuz was that Moses broke the 2 tablets from God, from stone. The 2 tablets of stone were broken. Just to give you a brief reminder, Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people on Shavuos, on the 6th day of Sivan, the Hebrew month of Sivan. The next day after that, Moshe goes up the mountain again, and he stays there for 40 days. The Torah tells us that on the 40th day, by some miscalculation, the Jewish people thought that he should be back a day earlier, because they counted the day he went up as the first day, and they shouldn't have counted that day, because you need 40 full days, and therefore the 40th day would be the day after. When the 40th day, by their calculation, arrived and he didn't show up, they panicked. And they began to question Moshe's veracity, if he's the real deal, because if he can say something that's going to happen, that he's coming down in 40 days and it doesn't happen, then maybe everything else he's saying is not really accurate. And they needed accuracy, because they're getting the word of God through a man. So they had to make sure that the conduit for God's voice through Moses, you can't have a conduit that is going to be sometimes right, sometimes wrong, a mistake here, a mistake there. That is too dangerous a situation. So they decided that no human being could be a conduit, because humans are fallible and humans can make mistakes. And when you need to pass the word of God down to the Jewish people and mankind through a conduit, it cannot be a fallible conduit.
That's your phone.
Yeah. So what do? They go ahead and they make a golden calf. They create a calf of gold, and they say God will speak through this calf. Because golden calves, can't make mistakes. Now, I'm not going to get in here today to a whole conversation of the logic behind that, or the illogic behind that, but you can at least begin to understand where the Jewish people are coming from. to them, the mistake, at least the way they understood it, their misinterpretation, was too risky to allow for. They couldn't allow that Mount Sinai and everything that brought about to the world, meaning God's communication to the world of what He wants and what He doesn't want. It has to be 100%. And the minute they saw Moses is capable of making a mistake in their miscalculation, they had to give up on him. That's what they thought. And therefore they figured to appoint another human being to be the conduit was back to back to square one. He too can make mistakes. So they said it's got to be something else. It's got to be a conduit through which there's no mistakes. And a calf can't make mistakes. I'm not going to get into that right now. I just wanted to mention it. And when Moshe comes down the mountain and he sees them dancing around the golden calf, he takes the tablets and throws them on the ground and breaks them, shatters them. Now you have to understand the importance of this, because the two tablets were carved by God, written by God, inscribed on the tablets by God. The whole thing was a godly thing. It was pure spirituality, miraculous. It says that they could read the tablets from both sides. The inscription was inscribed through and through, and you can read it from both sides, which itself is a miracle. It's impossible. That's how it was, because you're talking about a God-written or God-inscribed or engraved tablets. And imagine Moshe breaks it. And there's a whole debate. Why did he break it? What gave him the right to break it? And so on. Did he do the right thing? The sages and the Torah see this as one of the greatest heroic acts of Moses, because he saved the Jewish people as a result. In the famous parable that Rashi gives, because Mount Sinai was sort of a marriage between God and the Jewish people, right? God was marrying the Jewish people. It's called a marriage, God's marriage, the day of His wedding. He married the Jewish people. Him being the husband, us being the wife. Imagine a wife, then, what's the law if a wife cheats on her husband and commits adultery with another man? It's a death penalty. Adultery is a death penalty in the Torah. So here the Jewish people committed adultery, so to say, in the marriage. That's worshiping the golden calf. They gave up on their husband. They're cheating with another man, so to say. So Moshe sees it. So he thinks to himself, wait a minute, I can save the day. I can save the Jewish people by not hand-delivering them the marriage document, which is the Ten Commandments. That's the marriage documents. The Ketubah, which is the marriage documents. He takes the marriage document, rips it, meaning he just shatters it right there. So when God wants to kill them, He says, you really don't have a right to kill them, because technically they never got the marriage contract, so they were not technically married to you, so they are not technically committing adultery. I mean, it's a terrible sin what they did. But the death penalty, they escaped. And this was seen as one of Moshe's greatest acts of heroism. Okay. But at the end of the day, it's a day that brings about a calamitous feeling, because the tablets of God were shattered. The second tablets that he got 80 days later were not the same. They were written by Moses. They were written by God, but they were carved by Moses, and it lacked the spiritual. It lacked the spiritual dynamic of the first temple, of the first tablets. It says that with the first tablets, had it been given to the Jewish people, the Torah would be engraved in their heart. They would never forget any part of it. That's how powerful the spirit was, the spiritual energy of the first tablet. But in the second, that was no longer there. There are advantages in the second tablets over the first. They came along with much more knowledge and much more information. The Torah, the Agoda, the Medrash, much more was given with the second tablets than with the first. And they lasted. The bottom line is they did last, whereas the first didn't. But at the end of the day, when you break the tablets of God, that God carved and God inscribed, it is a day of tragedy. You wanted to say something?
No, I'm saying they were kept.
Yeah, they kept the pieces. They kept the broken pieces. They weren't discarded, but they were put in the ark, the holy ark. That's the first calamity that happened on the 17th of Tamuz. The second calamity that happened on the 17th of Tamuz, I'm not going to go in order of chronology, or maybe I should. Let me think about this. The second of the 5 was that, I'm not sure, there's 2 of them that I'm not sure which came first and which came. The other next 2 were that a certain ruler, I think it was a Greek ruler, or maybe a Roman ruler, burnt a Torah in public. He burnt a Torah scroll in public. Now, we all know that the Torah is the most sacred of Jewish items. This most sacred item in Judaism is the Torah. It's in the Ark. We treat it with the greatest respect. We're told that if someone lifts the Torah and it falls on the floor, beer, without its cover, you have to fast for 40 days. The community that witnessed that has to go through a fast of 40 days. If someone does Hagba, right, when they lift the Torah and it slips out of his hand and it falls on the floor, beer, the community is beside itself. That's how bad such a thing is. In other words, we treat it with the greatest respect. It's written. It takes a year to write it. It has to be done with the utmost holy, you have to, the scribe has to be of the highest level of spiritual, has to be a real God-fearing person. Can't just be, it's really, it's serious business. If a Torah gets burnt in a fire, which happens, if there's a fire in the synagogue and the Torahs get burned, what do you do with the Torah? You make a funeral for the Torah, and you bury it in a public, like you're doing a funeral for a human being. That's how it's treated. That's how serious the Torah, how important and sacred the Torah is. So you can imagine that when the ruler goes and makes a public spectacle and goes and burns the Torah to spite the Jewish people, to show that the Torah is going to be mistreated, that was reason for fast, to see it as a national day of calamity. The third thing that happened was that on top of that, not only did they burn the Torah, but they actually, in the time of the first temple, I think it was in the first temple, that's where I'm a little confused, I have to remember if this was in the first or second temple, but I think it was the first. One of the kings put an idol, takes an idol and puts it into the holy temple. Because in those days, in the first temple era, there were 2 temples. In the first temple era, there were a lot of kings that were very, very cruel, and they weren't holy at all. They weren't righteous kings. And much of the Jewish population was succumbed to idol worship. We talked about it yesterday in the class, how attractive idol worship was before the destruction of the first temple. It was one of those greatest temptations. And many of the kings turned the whole population into an idol worship population, the Jewish population. And one of them actually put an idol into the temple itself. Could you imagine?
I heard something about it that there was a
Avodah Zarah, idol.
And I remember that somebody said that somebody approached that individual that put that idol, and he said, if you were in my shoes during those times, the Avodah Zarah, that
it says that about Menashe.
So,
it says about Menashe.
That was
Menashe
so strong that you would actually do something very similar.
Menashe was the son of King Chizkiah. He was a king of Israel for 52 years. He reigned for 52 years. He was an evil king. He was terrible.
What was his name, please?
Menashe was the son of Chizkiah, and he was that king. And later it says that what you're talking about is one of the sages 1,000 years later. I think it was a Gilpul or something. He was like either he was a reincarnation of his soul or something like that. I have to remember. You're reminding me now of the details. I'm a little fuzzy on the details. But he had a conversation with this Menashe. That's what it says. His soul connected to the soul of Menashe. And Menashe told him, had you been in my times, you would be you would lift you would hold up my garments in respect for me. You would run after me to worship those idols. We can't relate to the temptation of idol worship today because it was removed. The sages after the first temple begged God to remove that temptation altogether, and He did. He did take it away, and we today can't even begin to. It's hard for us to imagine. Not hard. It's impossible for us to understand the temptation of idol worship. But back then, trust the sages. It was a very big temptation, and they couldn't overcome it. It was so strong that so many fell into it. And one of them, as you said, even put an idol in the temple itself. They began to worship. Could you imagine how bad it became? That the temple itself, which was the house of God, so that alone is another calamitous event that happened on this day. The fourth thing that happened was as follows. In the time of the Romans in the second temple, this is in the second temple, on the 17th of Tamuz is when the Romans who destroyed the temple breached the walls of Jerusalem. They laid siege on the wall months before, but it took time to get through. The walls were thick, they were fortified, it was a strong opposition. The Jewish people fought them very, very bravely. But eventually they broke through the walls, and 3 weeks later, on Tisha B'Av, on 9th of Av, they actually destroyed and burnt the temple. But because they were able to breach through the walls, which once you breach through the walls, the end is there. It's just a matter of time. So that became the day of national mourning, for which we fast because they breached the walls. We'll talk about that a little more as the class progresses. And the final thing that happened was as follows. Once they I'm sorry. This happened even before. Sorry, that was the last thing. The fourth thing that happened on the 17th of Tamuz was as follows. We're told, and it's in this week's portion actually, so it's kind of like also a portion of the week class. It says in the portion that we're going to read this week, Pinchas, the mitzvah that God gave the Jewish people, that once they build a temple, they should offer a daily offering every morning and every afternoon. It's called the Tamid offering, the daily continual offering, and that begins the day in the temple with the morning sheep and the afternoon sheep. The sheep in the morning and the sheep in the afternoon as a sacrifice. They would slaughter the sheep, sprinkle some blood on the altar, and offer the entire thing on the altar. It was a sacrifice to God. Every single day of the year.
Yom Kippur as well.
As Yom Kippur as well, of course. And that was the first thing they did in the temple and the last thing. That's how they opened the day and that's how they closed the day. Now, during the siege, the Jews, you got to get a little history over here. So let me give you a little historical background to this event. There were different factions among the Jewish people. There were different factions. There were those that wanted to end the battle with Rome because it was costly, and there were those that wanted to fight Rome till the end. Fight Rome till the end. And what happened was the Jews amassed an enormous amount of grain and water in Jerusalem. They amassed an enormous amount of water and grain, what do you call it? Things you need, it's the word I'm looking for. Supplies, exactly. Supplies to last them for a long time, to last throughout the siege, and they didn't know how long it was going to be. Now, the zealots at the time, Jewish zealots, wanted to fight the Romans. Don't let them stand around the wall and lock us in here because there was a siege. Famine was going to break out once they ran out of supplies. You know, there was a terrible situation. It was if you ever were in Jerusalem, when you lock when you just lay siege on the wall, there's no coming in, there's no going out. That's the end, right? It's just a matter of time. So the Zealots was saying, let's go fight the Romans. And the Jews, the other factions within the walls, or even outside of the walls, said, don't break don't break down the house, so to say. Don't fight. Let's wait. We can hold it out. Maybe let's see what the next day brings. Maybe it's a better day in the future. But they ran out of patience. Those that wanted to destroy the Romans and fight. So first of all, while the siege was going on, they had a deal. The two factions had a deal. They wanted the temple service to continue uninterrupted. So how did they do that? Where do you get the sheep? They're locked inside the walls. Where do you get sheep in the wall? There's no sheep in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem. So usually they'd have to they'd buy they'd get the sheep from wherever, from this shepherd, wherever they bought the sheep. Well, now when there's a siege, what do you do now? So there was a deal that the Jews outside would send up. They would pulley. They had a pulley. How they did it exactly, but they had a pulley, and they would send up a sheep every morning, 2 sheep every day, from outside the walls, and the Jews were able to offer a daily morning sheep and a daily afternoon sheep. This way the temple continues. But what happened was, at some point, there was an older fellow that said to the Zealots, you keep doing that, this is never going to end. This is never going to end. You got to put some pressure on the Jews inside that they should go to fight. As long as you get that, as the temple is the temple service continues, and they have supplies, water and grain and whatever else they need, this is going to go on for who knows how long, for months on end. So they did 2 things. The Zealots, they burnt all the supplies. They destroyed all the supplies in the storehouses to force the Jews to have to fight. Because once they run out, there's nothing to eat. That's all you're left with is you got to fight. And the second thing they did, and this is the 5th item that happened, is instead of sending up a sheep, they sent up a pig. They sent up a pig. This way, they said you send up a sheep every day, you're never going to get this. The temple service continues. There's no crisis. They sent up a pig, and that was just a complete and utter disaster for the Jewish people. It says that the sheep stuck its claws into the walls of the temple. That's something like the whole place shook. It was a sign from heaven that this was like the worst thing you could have done. But that was the day that the daily offering stopped. So on the 17th of Tamuz is when they did this. They sent up the sheep. They didn't send up the sheep. And that was the day that the daily offering ceased.
When was this event recorded?
In the Talmud. And that brought about the end. That was kind of, that was like the final straw. And then they broke through the walls. They broke through the walls, and they broke through the walls. That was the end. They went and ransacked Jerusalem, killed, in the Second Temple, they killed 1 million Jews. In the fight of the Second Temple, that war against Rome costed us 1 million people, which is half the population of the Jewish people. We think the Holocaust from 1939 to 45 was the worst. In terms of numbers, how many Jews were killed, it was by far the worst. But in terms of proportion, the calamity and the devastation to the Jewish people, some argue that the destruction of the Second Temple in terms of percentages was even worse of a blow to the Jewish people than the Holocaust. And don't forget, back then they killed you with a sword. There was no guns, and there was no fast, there was no easy killing. It wasn't mass killing like today. You had to go with a sword and kill one by one. Think about that. So it was a bloody war. It was a bloody war. So that was the fifth thing that happened. So again, you have the tablets were broken, they burnt the Torah in public, they put an idol into the temple, they stopped the daily offering, and they broke through the walls. I want to talk about the last two items. Because the seizing of the daily offering is something that relates to this week's portion. So I'll share with you an insight. There's a very interesting debate among the sages. If I were to ask you people sitting around the table, we have a big Torah, a big Bible. It's long. 5 books of Moses. What verse of the 5 books of Moses is the most important one that kind of encapsulates what Judaism is all about? If I had to ask you, give me one verse that says it all, that's the verse that encompasses the whole entire message of Judaism, which do you think it would be? Love your fellow as yourself. That could be. Which would be anyone else?
That the future of Torah through the children,
The what pledge?
where the women pledge to Hashem that the children.
That's not in the. That's actually not in the Torah itself. But I'm asking you a verse. I'm not going. You don't have to guess. Yeah.
I'm the Lord your God.
I'm the Lord your God. Okay, that makes sense.
What is it?
I'm the Lord your God. So there are 3 opinions among the sages about this. One says that the most important verse is the one that says that God created heaven and earth. I think that's one. I guess, once you understand that the beginning all comes from God, everything flows from there. And that's true, by the way. If you believe that God created the world, you also, by definition, have to believe that He created it with a reason. Right? God's not going to create a world without a purpose. If you believe that God created the world, then you also have to believe it's the logical next step is that He created it with a purpose. He had a reason why He did it. Which leads you to the next conclusion, which is that He's not going to keep that a secret. If He has a purpose for us, He's probably going to convey that purpose. And where did He convey that purpose? At Sinai. So belief in God forces you to believe in Sinai. In other words, if you believe that God created the world, you must believe in Sinai. It's a logical conclusion. So therefore that verse makes sense. Another opinion is, I think Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, similar to what you just said. To believe in one God, the unity of God is everything and so on. And shockingly, the third opinion is, actually the second opinion is not Bereshis, it's the verse at the end of the account of creation. It says, Zes Sefer Toldos Adam. This is the book of the creation of man. So it's basically the idea of creation of man, which is with purpose and so on, therefore, so it's the same idea. But so you have 2 opinions. One says that is the creation of man and the world. The other says that it's the Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, the Lord is one. The third opinion is a very shocking opinion. It's in this week's portion. If you can hand me a chumash, I'll show you the verse. Thank you. Turn to page. It's in the portion of Pinchas. Turn to page 1001. And it's chapter 28. So over here it talks about the daily and festival offerings, which we mentioned. right? And over here it reads as follows. I'm going to read verse 4 of this chapter. It says that you must offer up one lamb in the morning, and you must offer up one lamb in the afternoon. You see that verse? That's it. According to this third opinion, this verse encapsulates the entire story of Judaism. No, that's it. You don't need it. We're done. This is the verse. The verse in Hebrew, "Takeves ha'achad taseh baboker, v'takeves ha'achad taseh bein harba'im." The first one sheep you'll do in the morning, and one sheep you'll offer in the afternoon. According to this third opinion, that is the verse that encapsulates the entire story of Judaism. And that is a shocking opinion when you think about it. What in this verse would lead the sage to believe, to say that this is the verse that really captures the center point of all of Judaism? Why?
Who said that?
One of the sages, one of these three, in this debate among the sages, there are three opinions. Which verse captures Judaism? One is, I said the first two, and this is the third. The first two I can understand. Purpose of man, purpose of creation, God is one. That makes sense. You can argue. But the sheep in the morning, sheep in the afternoon, what is about this verse that is so... Why would the opinion say this? That this is it. This is the verse of the Torah, that this captures the entire message of Judaism. It sounds like a little, it's an important verse, no doubt. Every verse is important. But it's not in this verse, right? You wouldn't think so.
Because it's emblematic of the performance of all commandments.
Well, here's the way I would put it. When you think about Judaism, what is Judaism? It's a belief system. We believe in God. We believe that God spoke to man through Moses to tell us what he wants, the 613 commandments. We do there's a lot of things that we do, and a lot of things we're prohibited from doing. But what ultimately is Judaism? So let's take, for example, life itself. When you stop a person on the street and say, is life exciting? What will they tell you? Well, some days yes, some days not, right? Sometimes it gets boring, sometimes it gets tedious, Yeah, they'll tell you when the last time I went to the Grand Canyon, that was exciting, that was nice. I took my wife and family on a trip to Europe. We liked that. That was good. That was really exciting. But stop a mother on Carpool Lane, schlepping with kids, feeding them breakfast in the morning, or schlepping them to school, just doing the daily grind. It drives you get tired from it, right? It gets boring. It gets stale. No one would identify my most exciting day of the year is when I take my kids to carpool every day. Most people wouldn't say that, right? Shabbos is exciting. Passover is exciting. Other time, but the day when they're feeding my kids breakfast every day, when they're in the kvetchi and nuji, and they're crying, and this one has to blow his nose, and this one has to be changed, and this one is getting dirty after I just gave him a little bath. That's exciting. This sage is saying something very profound. And by the way, after the whole entire debate, they ruled that he was right, that this verse that I just showed you, the sheep in the morning, the sheep in the afternoon, that's the verse that captures the whole Torah. And the reason is because of what I'm saying. At the end of the day, Judaism is about a set of rules that we do daily, unchanging. It's the same thing every day. It's like life itself. Mothering a child, being a mother, being a husband, being a wife, being that type of person means to find excitement in the unexciting shores of the day. That sheep in the morning and that sheep in the afternoon, every single day, that's the same exact service every safe day for 365 days. In the morning and night, there's no change, the same blood, the same slaughtering, the same everything. At the end of the day, if you can't find life and excitement in the daily chores of life, you cannot live life. You will not be successful in life. If you don't find pleasure in the daily morning service, in the daily afternoon sacrifice, you'll never be able to get through life as a Jew. I've told the story many times. So I heard this from a rabbi. He told it to me. That there was a woman, actually a convert, who was very, very excited about Judaism. It was a lady. She was learning. It was in Minnesota, and she was learning about all the different aspects of Judaism. And this was in the 70s, I believe. When people were searching, right? There was and she finds herself learning with Rabbi Manis Friedman in his Institute for Women, and she's eating it up. She can't get enough of it. And she loves the Shabbos, and she loves the whole thing. The whole thing was just incredible to her. And she became Jewish. And a year later, or sometime later, he gets a call from her and says, Rabbi, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. So when I was new at it, and I was learning it, and it was exciting, and every day was a new experience, I couldn't get enough of it. But now, a year later, 2 years later, and it's every Friday night the same thing, every Shabbos the same thing. It's like I'm losing the excitement in this. It's not there. But help me out. She was crying. How do I get back that spark, that joy, that fire? He says to her, now you live in Judaism. You don't realize what's happening. You live in Judaism. What do you think? Life is exciting every single day? Wait till you become a mother, he tells her. You think it's going to be exciting every day? Yeah, sure. When you get out of the living room, you have this beautiful child in your hand. There's nothing greater than that. You can't believe the miracle that just happened. You're excited. There's a bris, there's a baby name, whatever it is that you're going to do. But then the kid becomes a month old and 2 months old, and he fetches and he's waking up in the middle of the night. And it's non-stop, year after year after year after year. And he says that's what life is. You're going to feel bored sometimes with Judaism, but you're going to do it anyway. That's the experience of Judaism. That's what this sage is telling us. Life happens. Life happens. The morning sheep in the morning, even the daily sheep in the daily afternoon sheep. That's the verse that captures Judaism, because that's what life is. It captures life. That is life. Life is not the Musaf service, which comes once in a while, which is exciting. The life is the Tamid, the daily offering. That's life. And that's where you have to find passion. That's where you have to find commitment. It's the daily commitment to what's right. In other words, this verse is telling us a very important truth. Are you committed to the truth because it's the truth? Or are you committed to the truth because it excites you? That's what you have to, that's the verse that tells us that the daily commitment to the morning is not going to be exciting. Trust me, you can't be excited with the same thing every single day for 120 years. But are you committed to it nonetheless because it's true? Because it's real, because it connects you to God, because it touches your soul. That's the verse in Judaism. That's the verse that captures Judaism. That's what it is. It's the commitment to the truth because it's true, not because it sounds and feels and looks good. It's because it is good. It may not feel good, it may not sound good, it may not look so cute, but it is the truth. It is good, no matter what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like. That's this verse. It's that commitment of a Jew, of a human being for that matter, to life as it happens every single day. That's it. If you can get through that, then you'll enjoy the musafs. You'll enjoy the additional exciting things in life, When the holidays come around, you'll gravitate towards them, of course, and you'll be that'll give the spice to life. But life itself is the morning and the afternoon sheep. Judaism itself is the daily grind. The commitment to truth because it's true. The commitment to God because my soul needs it and my soul wants it. Whether I can feel it, smell it, hear it, and whatever. And that is why when it was interrupted in the temple, that was the time to fast. That was the calamity. When you took away the daily grind of Judaism from the Jewish people, that commitment to truth because it's true, which was represented by the interruption of the daily offering, Judaism came to an end, almost. I mean, it didn't, thank God, but that was the danger. That was a major, major calamity. Didn't look like it, so they didn't bring the sheep in the temple. Like, who saw it anyway? It's not like anyone even saw the daily sheep being offered. The Kohen that was in there did it, and on behalf of the Jewish people. It's not like you and me saw it. We weren't even there. So the question is, what's your daily sheep and what's your morning and afternoon sheep? Find it. And even if it's boring, and even if it's tedious, and you don't, enough already of this, right? How much could I do this? That's where life happens. That's where the commitment has to be, first and foremost. The hardest place to commit is there, but you're committed to the truth because it's true. I could guarantee you the Kohen, I can't guarantee you anything, but I wasn't there, so I don't know this firsthand. But I can imagine that the Kohen that brought the sheep, not sure that, the guy was so jump and enjoy, this every day doing it, especially if you would be the Kohen. Thank God you're not a Kohen, right? And then we get to the breach of the walls. The breach of the walls is an important thing. I spoke about this Friday night, but I'll mention it again. This is symbolism over here. Why is a breach of the walls such a calamity? What do walls represent? The walls around Jerusalem. That was the wall around the temple. That's what protected the temple. What's your temple? Do you have a temple? Well, you could say this is my temple, right? But do you have a temple in your soul? Have a temple in your heart? What is that which you hold most sacred? What's the most sacred thing in your life? That's the temple, right? What is the most sacred thing in your life?
The body is the temple of the soul, no?
True, but I'm talking more spiritually. What is temple? Temple is the holy place where you unite with God. What is that thing in your life that you consider your sanctuary? What is the most sacred thing in your life? What? Family. Okay, what does that mean? What does a family mean?
Security.
How is a family supposed to conduct itself?
Help each other.
There's many things, obviously. That's not a trick question. The point is, you want to say it's family. For other things, it may be. Everyone would say family is important, is a top priority. And that's a value. I think our values is what I'm getting at. Our values are our sanctuary, the things that we hold dear. We must stick to our values. What's your value in life? This person say, "I'm a good person." What does he mean by that? I'm a good person. I don't hurt. I don't steal. I'm not dishonest. I treat people with respect. All those things, right? Those are your values. What are the values you instill into your children? What's the most important value you want to instill into your children? If I had to pinpoint one value, what would you say it was?
Respect.
Respect for other people.
Right.
Or for God.
Yeah. For God, mainly.
For God. Respect for God. How do you respect God? By respecting others, by fulfilling his desires, what he wants, and so on. Okay. Every value needs a wall around it, meaning a protective wall around the value. What do I mean by that? So let's say you're going to be, you say, I'm an honest person. I'm an honest person. What does honesty mean? You don't cheat. You're not going to go into Publix and shoplift. You're not going to do underhanded business deals. You're not going to, obviously, you're going to treat, you're going to be an honest person. You're not going to do any shady business deals and try to outsmart someone else and take money which is really not yours, even though you think it's okay. But there's gray areas in this area, There's a lot of gray area here. That people always find rationalizations to what they're doing. They're not outright stealing from someone else. Someone was telling me the other day he's a salesman. He's a salesman. And part of being a salesman, you have to embellish the product a little bit. You got to make it sound better than it is. So most people, when they do that kind of sales pitch, they don't think much of it. They sell it as best as they can, even though it's not exactly accurate. Of course, he's not going to sell a 2015 car and say it's a 2017. He's an outright liar. That's theft. But he's not going to disclose every last detail of the car that he's selling, let's say. He knows that there's a defect somewhere that no one can see it. He's not going to say. Is he obligated to say it? You can argue maybe not. By the law, maybe he's not obligated to say. You want to check it out? That's your problem. I don't have to be the one to tell you every flaw that's in my car that I'm selling you now. That's your job to check it out. Go on a test drive and check out the car. Take it to a mechanic and do your due diligence, right? I don't have to be the one to disclose every last defect in my item I'm selling. Or do you? Guy's trusting you. So, if you want to say my value is honesty, well, I'm honest, yeah. By law, you were honest. By law, you didn't have to disclose it, so you're an honest person by law. But for that, the Torah says put a wall around your honesty, meaning to say really protect that value. If you consider honesty a sacred value, stretch it a little bit, meaning make a wall around it so that you go till the end and make sure that you're really honest. You know what happens when those walls are breached? You say, okay, I really need now money, so this time I'm not going to disclose every last detail. I'm not going to steal. It's his problem. Usually I would say, I'd make sure to be honest and open about everything I do. But right now I'm tight and I need to pay my mortgage and I can make a quick sale, so I'm going to sell the car as is and I'm not going to tell him every last defect. You breached your wall. You breached your wall. The Romans have just breached your wall. The Roman within. Every one of us has a Roman within. Roman, I mean the ancient Roman, the evil or Roman Empire. That's the evil inclination within. It gets you, it breaches that sacred space. You can do a little bit of an infraction. You don't have to be super religious today. You're pretty cool, you're pretty good, look by any books. Anyone would measure your level of honesty, they would say he's an upstanding, upright person. But the wall is a little breach in the wall. You'll let yourself slip in one little iota. You know what happens next? That breach becomes bigger, and then the wall crumbles, and then the whole value goes out the door. The next thing you know is you're outright stealing. And before you even know it, that happens. It's all at 3 weeks. That's all it takes. From the 17th of Tamuz, when the walls were broken, to the destruction of the temple in fire, where they totally burnt down the temple, was 3 weeks. It didn't take long. Our values can go out the door in no time. That's the tragedy of making a mistake. How long does it take to build up a value? It takes 10 years to educate children in good values, maybe 20 years. How long does it take to mess it up? One mistake. One mistake. A good kid, you know that it happens that way. A kid is educated by his parents, which are upstanding, good people. And the parents put their heart, soul, blood, sweat into this kid, everything. They gave 20 years to make sure this kid is upstanding, put him through school, gave him good values. Really, I'm talking about real serious, Then he goes to a party, and he's with a bunch of guys or girls or whatever, and they say, why don't you take this, try this. It's going to make you feel good. And they take one stupid smoke. Whole life is gone. 20 years went down the drain with one mistake. That's the tragedy of, it's not fear. If it takes 20 years to build up a character, why shouldn't it take 20 years to destroy a character? But it doesn't. It takes 20 minutes to destroy a character. It takes 20 years to build a character, and it takes 20 minutes to destroy a character. I don't mean that quite literally, but you can make one mistake and you're downhill. It spirals downward so fast you don't even know what hit you. 3 weeks is all it takes for when that breach till the destruction is 3 weeks. So the walls are the most important. The 17th of Tamuz is really the day that the problems begin. And in one, really, you can argue that it started even one phase earlier. Because there's one more fast that we fast for this destruction, which is the 10th of Tamuz. The 10th of Tamuz is when the Jewish people, when the Babylonians in the first temple, they laid siege on the temple. Not on the temple, on the city of Jerusalem. They laid siege. And we fast that day. What does it mean to lay siege on a wall? They didn't touch the wall yet. They didn't break, they're not destroying the wall. They're not doing anything. They're just surrounding the wall. The people inside the wall, what do they feel? They feel tremendous pressure. It's pressure. They're not doing anything. They're not throwing stones over the wall. They're not shooting. They're not doing anything. They just laid siege. What's siege mean? In the metaphor that we just spoke about our own spiritual place and our character and so on, when you start feeling a pressure, maybe I should. You didn't even do it yet, but you're not even 100% sure anymore. It enters a thought that maybe I can be a little lax with this value, like in the case that I just said, being honest in business. You didn't do it yet, but you're giving it thought. That's the Romans laying siege on your value. If you're even thinking about it, you may say yes, you may say no, even if you're going to say no at the end. The thought of the very thought that perhaps I can, and maybe this time I should be a little lenient, that's the beginning of the end. So the Yetzer Hara lays siege on your value, on your city, on your sanctuary. Yetzer Hara means the evil inclination. It's putting pressure on you. Maybe you give it a thought. Maybe you don't have to be so religious. Maybe you can miss a day of the daily offering. Maybe you can miss a day of davening. Maybe you can miss a Shabbos. Maybe you can miss this. You didn't even do it yet, but your thought process, even entertaining that maybe I could, that's the beginning of where it all breaks down. So that's why we fast. When they break in, that's already the second step. So you got to be steadfast. And that's why these days of fast is. We actually fast. We don't eat, we don't drink for 12 hours today, more, 15, 14. From dawn to dusk. To commemorate, to inculcate, to really drive this point home. That you really have to protect who you are. Because it's very easy to lose it. It takes much longer to build it than to lose it. How long does it take to build a house? One fire, boom, this whole thing is gone. You can't build a house and boom, you can't destroy a house and boom. You can destroy a human being in no time. Destroy the car, you have to leave. Go. So I want to just, it's already 11:15, so I'm going to wish everyone a wonderful fast, an easy fast, and God willing, we'll see you again for next week.
Thank you.
All the best. And the main thing is to learn the lessons of all of these things, as we just pointed them out. Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me miss next week. I have the
Sorry,
celebration
yes,
of honor.